I had been looking forward to this weekend for weeks. A mini getaway, just me and my best friend catching up after months of not seeing each other. I had a long drive ahead of me. My friend lived in another state, and to make the most of the weekend, I decided to drive through the night so I could get there by Saturday morning. Most of the trip was just empty roads stretching out in front of me. Barely any cars in sight. After a couple of hours, I pulled into a small gas station off the highway. One of those places that always look half abandoned, with flickering neon signs and a single pump barely holding on to life. I filled up the tank and stepped inside to grab some snacks and coffee to keep me awake. The store was empty, except for the cashier and one other guy. He stood near the back, looking at the fridge full of sodas, a heavy backpack slung over one shoulder. He was bundled up, scarf, winter hat, thick gloves, like he'd been out in the cold for hours. I grabbed a few things and headed to the register, glancing at him for just a second. His eyes were on me. Not in a casual way either. He didn't look away when I saw him. I paid for my things and left quickly, shaking off the weirdness. Long drives mess with your head. You start noticing things that probably don't mean anything. The road ahead was quiet. Hours passed, nothing but darkness and the occasional road sign marking the distance to the next town. Around midnight, I decided to stop at a small roadside diner. It was one of those old-fashioned places with checkered floors, faded menus, and a waitress who looked like she had been working there for decades. The place was nearly empty. Just an old couple in a booth and a trucker sipping his coffee at the counter. I took a seat by the window, ordered a burger and coffee, and just enjoyed the break. At some point, someone walked up to my table. "Hey, sorry to bother you." I looked up. It was him. The guy from the gas station. The same thick gloves, the same scarf wrapped up to his nose, his backpack slung over one shoulder. My stomach dropped. "I was wondering if I could catch a ride with you," he continued. "Just to the next town. It's on your way, right?" I didn't know what to say. I wasn't comfortable with the idea of picking up a stranger, but I didn't want to be rude either. "Ah, man, I wish I could," I said, forcing a polite smile. "But I'm actually taking a detour meeting someone before I get there." His eyes, the only part of his face I could see, narrowed slightly. He didn't respond at first. Just stood there for an uncomfortably long moment. "You sure?" he finally asked. I nodded. "Yeah, sorry. Hope you find a ride, though." For a second, he just stared. Then, without another word, he turned and walked out of the diner. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. After finishing my food, I got back on the road. The night stretched on, the sky an endless void above me. The radio crackled with static before settling on a low-volume song. Everything felt normal again. Peaceful, even. Until my car started slowing down. At first, I thought my foot had slipped off the gas. But no. The engine sputtered. The dashboard lights flickered. Then, just like that, the car coasted to a stop at the side of the road. I tried restarting it. Nothing. Gripping the wheel, I checked my phone. No signal, no Wi-Fi, nothing but the empty road and the surrounding darkness pressing in on me. I sat there trying to figure out what to do, when I noticed headlights approaching. A truck. Relief washed over me. I stepped out, raising a hand to signal them. The truck slowed to a stop beside me, and the driver, a middle-aged guy with a kind face, rolled down the window. "Car trouble?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "It just stopped working out of nowhere." He nodded. "Well, there's a motel not too far from here. I got some tools in my truck over there. I can take you there, let you sleep for the night, and I'll come back in the morning to take a look at your car." It was the best option I had, so I accepted. The motel was the definition of rundown. Flickering sign, cracked parking lot, a front desk that looked like it hadn't been cleaned in years. The driver got me checked in, told me he'd be back in the morning, then left. The room was fine. Barely. A stained carpet, dim lighting, and a bed that looked more uncomfortable than my car seat, but it was warm. And after the night I'd had, I was just grateful to have a place to rest. Then, around 2 a.m., something woke me up. A sound. A faint scraping at the door. I sat up, heart pounding. It was subtle, like someone was dragging something against the wood. I held my breath, straining to listen. Then, soft knocking. Slow, deliberate. I crept toward the door, careful not to make a sound, and looked through the peephole. A man stood outside, bundled in thick winter clothing. A scarf wrapped high over his face, gloves covering his hands. It was him again, the guy from the gas station. He stood there, perfectly still, as if he knew I was watching. Then he reached into his backpack. My blood ran cold. Before I could react, footsteps pounded from outside. A voice, loud, firm. The driver. "What the hell are you doing?" The man froze. Then, in one swift motion, he turned and bolted into the night. The driver banged on my door. I threw it open, breathless. "You all right?" he asked. I nodded, barely able to process what had just happened. "He was trying to get into my room," I finally managed. The driver's jaw tightened. He stayed with me the rest of the night, keeping an eye on the door. The next morning, he helped me fix my car. Before I left, he told me something that still lingers in my mind. "You were lucky, kid. If I hadn't come back when I did, I don't think you would be telling this story." I never saw the man again, but I still wonder what was in his backpack, and what would have happened if I had given him that ride.